What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. But first, thank you guys so much for helping the channel reach 3,000 subscribers. I don't know how to celebrate yet, but you know what? We'll celebrate now. Ready? On the count of 3, everybody just say woohoo! 1, 2, 3, woohoo! If you didn't do it, then I'm the only one that did it, which makes me look like an asshole, so I hope you did it back at home. Either way, thank you guys so much for helping the channel reach this far. We're gonna just keep on going here down the road. Let's go ahead and get some RPG horror stories for today. Awful wannabe writer makes Mary Sue Edgelord character, then refuses to even play due to his own ego. Before I begin the story, I have a confession to make. Personally, I've always found edgy D&D characters and the people who play them to be rather fascinating, mainly because I find it hilarious when people try to make these super cool lone wolf badasses, only for it to backfire on them in a hilarious fashion when they don't get their way and no one can take them seriously, causing them to throw a temper tantrum. However, despite playing D&D for over 12 years and reading many RPG horror stories about them, I've never encountered a character like this in the wild. A friend of mine once played a pretty edgy character, an outcast drow wild magic sorcerer who got his magic due to being half demon, but he actually turned out really well and was loved by myself and all the other players, mainly because he kept his edges just the right level and had more character than just hating everything. However, a few months ago, it happened. Dear readers, allow me to introduce you to Damian Valdegar, Ordo the Mutant Blood Hunter multiclass with a fiend-packed warlock. No, you didn't misread it. This is real. And well, do I really need to say more? Yes, you really want to say more. I am hooked. Tell me about him. I'm obviously joking. You can absolutely have Blood Hunter and Warlock characters who aren't edgelords, same as with any other class. It all depends on the execution, and I've personally seen characters who those exact subclasses both done brilliantly. But Damian and his players were just something else. Plus, I think he is indicative of a much deeper problem with the people who bring characters like this to the table. Brace yourself, reader. This is going to be a bad in the best way possible. Someone I knew, a guy I wasn't quite friends with but had known for about 4 years, mentioned to me he was interested in getting into D&D. I offered to show him the ropes a bit, and after we set up a time to discuss things, I mentioned one of the things we'd be discussing was character creation. To my surprise, he said he already had a character and asked me if I could look at what he'd made and give him my thoughts. I agreed, but I have another confession. There was an ulterior motive to my actions here. You see, I'd known this guy in writing circles, fanfiction specifically, and I knew that he had a really bad habit of making Mary Sue characters who were basically self-inserts of whatever fandom he was writing about, including but not limited to Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and Harry Potter. And in said stories, he would rewrite and undo entire elements of the canon, either to make his OC the center of the universe, or simply because he didn't like him. Usually both. For example, Game of Thrones fans, you know the Tyrion-Tywin dynamic? Tywin? Maybe I'm mispronouncing it. The rivalry that was so interesting, compelling, especially in the books, and that gave you insight into the mindset of the two people that were rooted in how the upbringing shaped who they were, leading to so many great moments and a compelling payoff? Gone. In his fanfic, Tyrion and Tywin were buddy-buddy for no established reason, and there was no dislike between them all, with Tywin accepting Tyrion as his heir. Eat your heart out, Season 8. Also, his Star Wars OC takes Anakin's place as Palpatine's protege, then overthrows him and goes to rebuild the Sith Empire. Of course the Edgelord would side with the Sith. Of course they would, cause of course, yeah, gotta be the bad boy every single time. Like, it's so stereotypical. It makes sense, but it's so stereotypical. So given this guy's track record, although to his credit he had been shown some small improvement over the years I knew him, I decided to have a look at what he'd made. Without wishing to sound too authoritarian, I was planning to see what he had come up with and if it would work in the D&D game. Fine. And if it felt like it wouldn't, I was hoping to iron out the bumps with some constructive feedback. And so, over the Discord chat, he introduced me to Damian, and it wasn't long before I knew I had my work cut out for me. Damian was a wood elf with a soldier background, and his backstory was that he was a rough and tough orphan living on the streets of the capital city of an elven kingdom. So badass that he apparently killed a fully grown man in a fight when he himself was only 9 years old. He was found and taken in by a special forces unit of mutagen using super soldiers within the kingdom's army and trained to be one of them. And of course, he not only survived the ridiculous grueling training method, but proved to be the best of them, even becoming an officer and solo killing multiple dangerous monsters like trolls, mind flayers, beholders, and demons. Also, he gained a great deal of fame and became a local hero due to his first and most famous kill, 1v1 against a massive Hydra, then skinning the beast to wear its hide as cloak. And all of this before even starting the campaign. All these Mary Sues and Gary Stews have the same thing in common with it, right? This whole story arc of things that happened to them. But like, they started level 1. And apparently they killed a Hydra, killed a man, defeated God, defeated the devils of hell, explored all levels of hell, created new levels of hell, all at level 1. They don't understand that like, you're writing a backstory of how you got here. You had a good thing going with being like an orphan, being put into this like sect in order to become like, you know, mutagen inspired, mutagen controlled and enhanced person. And you should have stopped right there. That would have been a perfect start. And then maybe figure out some sort of a backstory as like motivation. But no, you have to also make it so you can fight a Hydra. And you're this ultra special cool person and stuff. And you have a cloak of a Hydra and stuff. Probably requesting some sort of as like a magical item, probably. Writing in your own stuff. Writing in your own overpowered nonsense into the game at level 1. Backstories is how your character got to here, not the full story. If you write all your fun stuff during the backstory, then what's the point of playing the game? You would experience all this incredible stuff. What's the point of even having it? Just anything to go off of at that point, you know? What's the point? Then as Damien grew into adulthood, the king himself took an interest in him, inviting him to the palace and speak with him. Turns out this guy was actually Damien's uncle, who had usurped the throne by murdering the previous king and queen, Damien's parents, and tried to dispose of the prince, but failed. He then tried to finish what he started by sicking his personal guard on Damien, barely succeeding in bringing him down, after a fight scene where Damien killed all the guardsmen save 2, who'd be mini-bosses in the personal story later on, and disposing of the blood hunter's body in the river. Damien didn't stay dead for long though, as his soul lingered on the edge of the afterlife. He was approached by Bel, outcast archdevil and the former ruler of Avernus. He had taken an interest in Damien and his combat prowess and apparently sympathized with him over having been usurped, as Bel had also suffered that humiliation. And so he proposed a deal, power and the chance for Damien to take back his birthright in exchange for allowing Bel to possess his body. Damien agreed and so rose from the grave, suffused with the archdevil's power, and is now out to regain his throne to get revenge against his uncle. This has also changed him physically, apparently giving him sharpened teeth and eyes that, I quote, have lizard pupils that burn like hellfire. So to summarize, we basically have a stew made from mixing the Witcher's Geralt of Rivia, mutagen monster slayer super soldier, Shadow Mordor's Talion, dead warrior coming back to life due to being possessed by a magical being, Warhammer Fantasy's Malus Darkblade, Elf, the demonic nature of his patron, and the Lion King's Simba, exiled prince reclaiming his kingdom from his uncle, mixed together, served with a side of self-insert and horrifically overseasoned with wannabe badass. That's, you know what, actually, wow, that's actually a perfect explanation for this combo. Even Simba makes sense too. Huh, this writer is really onto something. Now, just to be clear, I'm not gonna go after the guy for taking inspiration from other characters. After all, let's not beat around the bush. We all know this is a core part of D&D. Plus, I'm not sure he was even aware of Malus Darkblade's existence. Also, credit where credit is due for him, he had done at least some research and actually chose what thought was a mildly interesting patron. As far as I'm aware, in the Forgotten Realms, Bel isn't actually cast out of the Nine Hells, but an archdevil who might be doing this as part of the plan to gain his throne back, playing and manipulating Damien to seek power and pretending to sympathize with him after having also been disposed of his own position. Tons of potential there for an interesting warlock patron dynamic if you did it right. However, I say this now because the only thing I'm gonna cut him some slack on, because here's where the problem gets worse. Side note, Damien was described as having silver hair and, following his resurrection, red eyes. So I have to ask, what is with the edgelord characters and the albino look? I've noticed that quite a few times when edgy character is also an albino. Is there some kind of a connection? I'm aware of Elric of Melnibone, the OG fantasy albino, but I'm fairly sure most of these guys making edgy characters probably aren't. Honestly, he just looks cool. The wide hair, the stark eyes, just makes you look mysterious. I mean, look at Geralt of Rivia. Geralt of Rivia looks like a badass. White hair, cat's eyes, they have like this golden yellowy shimmer to them, almost look like piss-colored eyes. It's just a cool character design, and other people see that and go, oh, that's cool. I want to make my character like that. I don't know, man. It's just a cool design. But I digress. When I heard this character concept, there were concerns I felt I had to raise after I finished his initial pitch. To be clear, I paraphrased these as suggestions and accompanied each one with suggested alternatives. I wasn't just saying your character sucks and listing all the reasons why, but here goes. Personally, I explained that Damien being so powerful before this story even started wouldn't be likely to fly in an actual game, since the idea that he was already a badass killing machine didn't leave the character with anywhere to go during the actual campaign itself. The experience of becoming more powerful alongside your party is something I think is integral to D&D, especially for forming bonds between characters and players, both due to the feeling of accomplishment something together. So I suggest Damien may be more of a mid-range blood hunter in his unit as a means of getting around this. This was related to the second concern I raised. There wasn't a clear explanation as to how Damien managed to avoid his uncle's coup. Was he smuggled out of the palace by loyalists as a baby? And if they did that, why would they apparently abandon the prince to live as a feral child? They could have raised him themselves, or at the very least left him in an orphanage. The guy then said that he escaped himself, to which I replied that surely this happened when he was old enough to escape. Surely he remembers something about his mom and dad. He apparently doesn't. Or how does that work? Maybe the backstory, and this gotta sound messed up, is maybe he was dropped as a baby, you know, more than once. Maybe hit the head a little bit too hard, and that's why his edge activated because he hit the head a little bit too hard and just became full edge. Maybe. One thing I also wanted to ask about, but never got the chance to, was how Damien can apparently 1v1 beholders and demons, but not a group of guards. The math ain't mathing, chief. That never came about. Because while I was suggesting ways to get around these concerns, I could tell the guy was getting frustrated, even as I said something to the effect of, you might want to sort these to make things easy for your DM to work the story into the campaign, and I frankly started to get the impression that he didn't like or couldn't take criticism. And his defensive response was legitimately just start listing off things the character had done in his backstory, not even seeming to pay attention to what I was saying, almost like he was in a trance. Some of the ones that I remember include Damien having a pet dragon that he raised since it was an egg and used it as his personal mount, not a drake, an actual dragon. Him fighting in an outright invasion of his homeland by an orc army and turning the tide of battle single-handedly by descending from on high on his dragon and cutting down the orc chieftain and all his bodyguards. Love interests. Apparently Damien has a hot girlfriend, and he literally described it as being like a Batman and Catwoman relationship, right down to his girlfriend being a career thief who uses a whip as her main weapon. He also said something about Damien rescuing a nobleman's beautiful daughter from a drow enclave that was raiding the kingdom's lands, wiping out the dark elves to the last man. He then brought the daughter back home, and they also began a romance. So he has a harem. Of course he has a harem. Of course. Why would he not have a harem? Of course he got a harem and a dragon he single-handedly turned the war against. This guy's not listening. This guy is generally not listening to anything this OP is saying and just thinks, well, my character is just as cool. He has a dragon and he turned the tide of war and he has a girlfriend. No, he has two girlfriends. He has a harem, DM. Of course he does. Have you considered how? Have you considered why? Have you even considered maybe, just maybe, it might be cool to have these sort of events happen while you're playing the game instead of putting it down for your backstory? Listen, I get it. The desire, the strong desire to make the most overpowered, super cool, badass, extra, like, Riz up, like Master Rizzler. I hate that I said that, but you know what I mean. The effect to want to create the most powerful, most epic character of your fantasy with all fan fiction in tow is strong. You should be experiencing these moments of single-handedly turning the tide of war or trying to turn any tide of war at all in session, potentially finding a baby dragon egg. You should be finding that in session, potentially getting love interests in session. If you pre-write everything that you've done, if your character already has all these amazing things, what would be the point for them to join a party of adventurers? What would be the point for them to adventure in the first place? They have a dragon. They single-handedly turn over an army. They're part of an order. They have a harem. Why would they join a party of adventurers? Some measly adventurers that are doing whatever they're doing, that are on their own quest. Write a character that wants to adventure with others, that needs to adventure with others, that wants to be in this world, that it needs to make some sort of progress, some sort of integral progress in this damn world. Instead of just writing about you these perks, because Damien right now has no purpose or reason to be with any party. He's super strong on his own, apparently, so he doesn't need to be with anybody else because everybody else is gonna slow him down or whatever. I bet you that's gonna be one of his key phrases. You guys are slowing me down. Damien, I'm just too powerful, too cool, and too sex-filled, or whatever. All this was obviously setting off a deafening level of Mary Sue alarms in my head. And while over the course of this conversation, I was really starting to wonder what I could would do with this, I decided not to give up, since they're running the risk of making it feel like I was just picking holes in his idea, although I don't think that's what I was doing. I decided to ask him where he was planning for his character's personal storyline to go. This got him excited again, and he went into a long and detailed description of how Damien would return to overthrow his uncle and reclaim his kingdom, including some very detailed descriptions about how his character would besiege the city with an army, fight his way through the castle single-handedly to find his uncle cowering on the throne, and after fighting and disarming him, he'd give his sword into his uncle's heart and send his soul to the 9 hells. Then, after becoming the rightful king and taking his girlfriend as his queen, I have no idea which one of the two he meant to this, by the way, he had an even higher goal in mind. Although his explanation wasn't clear for how this would happen, he was planning for Damien and Belle to return to the 9 hells, regain Avernus from Zerial, and then go to the overthrow Asmodeus and make themselves the new ruler of the hells. This guy already has the end. He has the beginning of the story, the climax, and the finish. This guy needs to write a book, not play D&D. If he already has everything pre-written, then what's the point of him having to be played out if you know how it's going to go? You're spoiling the story for yourself. The whole point of playing a D&D character and making a D&D character is working with your DM and the rest of the party and seeing how it goes, allowing the randomness of the dice and DM's creativity as well to input stuff onto the character story. You can have a general goal for your character, right? Reclaim the throne of the old kingdom or the father or something. That's fine. But then everything in between is up to the DM to concoct and brew and just start cooking. It's a combination effort of you giving some ideas and DM throwing their ideas into this big mixing pot, right? Churning away at this like cauldron of story making and then creating something for your character, some sort of a story, an arc, an adventure, twists and turns. That's the fun of it. If you have everything pre-written and pre-planned, then what's the point of playing it out if you know how it's going to end? There's not going to be point to it. It's going to be satisfying and self-flatulating your character's fantasy. That's all it is. Now, I'm not a Forgotten Realms lore expert, so I'm not going to say anything on whether this would even be possible, but over the top as it was certainly a fun idea, and I said as much, telling him, okay, that's actually kind of cool. I'm sure if it fit the campaign you and your party were in, your DM could work with that. His response with, what do you mean? To which, over a bit of a back and forth, I explained that usually in D&D, the DM will have the story of the campaign they're telling and will work in player stories as the goal where appropriate. That's how I do it, at least. Upon hearing this, the guy started to lose it. First in a confused panic sense as he tried to puzzle out that Damien wouldn't be at the center of the campaign, and that he seemed to start getting increasingly angry when I mentioned that other players would be tagging along. He might have to play through their characters' backstories as well, and how things might not go exactly as he wanted. For context, I end up saying something to the effect of, sometimes in D&D, things don't go to plan. I've had a couple situations where I've been, hell yeah, this is gonna be awesome, and then the dice don't pan out. That's just part of the game. This didn't help though. He started raising his voice, saying that he was worried that other players and characters would ruin his story, and that the dice might screw up what he had in mind. Try to calm him down by saying that other player characters in D&D are usually invested in helping the rest of the party, unless one of them is a real asshat, and that different strength of every party usually helps make things easier and make a party better at progressing the story. After all, I said, no character can be the best at everything. And then the crap hit the fan. The dude outright yelled at me, accusing me of calling his character a Mary Sue, and ranting about how everyone he asks to look at his character ruins his ideas by wanting to change them. One bit I remember him saying after he accused me of saying Damien was a Mary Sue was, if I hear those words one more time, I'm going to explode. Mate, you said them, not me. But in all seriousness, if I wasn't trying to be constructive in my critique of Damien, I would consider him such. We have a character who is extremely overpowered for the situation he is in, wants to be the complete center of the entire narrative, played by somebody who clearly sees his character as an extension of themselves, not just having a couple of traits from their players to make them more relatable to others or to get into the character's head, which I think is absolutely fine, especially if you're playing a roleplay heavy campaign, but a character literally seen as idealized version of themselves, no more, no less. There's an important difference. It's one thing to have a character based on you. It's another thing to have a self-insert that has to be perfect in everything they do, have to be the bestest ever in everything they do. No flaws, no failures, only win, 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 win. The whole point of the campaign, the whole point of even playing TTRPGs is the randomness of the dice. Why do you think you roll the dice so much? The randomness factor, to see if something succeeds or fails. That's the fun of it. There's no fun if you just succeed in everything you want. If you want a character to succeed in everything you want, and you want a fantasy to play out however you want to, write a book. Simple as that. Write a book. Don't play TTRPGs if you don't want to have the randomness of seeing how this interactive storytelling goes. Anyway, after a long and uncoordinated rant about D&D now sounding stupid, I wanted to find a different place he could use Damien. He left the call. So yeah, and that happened. In truth, I'm glad this guy didn't end up joining my group if what he was expecting was for us to rewrite the entire campaign and party to focus solely on him. And without a doubt, Damien is one of the worst characters I've ever personally come across. I've seen a few dark characters work in D&D before, Madra Sorcerer Friend and a few others included, but haven't heard of plenty of edgy badasses like this one over the years in other people's horror stories, and now seeing this one for myself in a while, it just confirms the suspicion I've held for many years. These people don't want to play D&D, a cooperative role-playing game. They want to play XX Cold Steel Lone Wolf XX's personal power fantasy. They want to be destroying every obstacle left, right, and center without ever bringing challenge or expected to grow. They want to be seen as playing a deep and complex character, despite not even coming close to meeting the requirements for either of those. And above all else, I don't think they even want to play a game. They just want to be the main character in their own story, where all the other players don't even exist at all, or are just captive audience to behold how awesome they are. Or rather, how awesome they think they are. That's one of the things that stuck to me as a big difference between my friends who have played dark characters and people like this guy here. Should I have stuck out for a little longer or just never bothered in the first place? I don't know. Was I foolish to expect more from this guy given I knew his writing was like? Most likely yes. I guess I just tried to think that anyone is beyond improvement, so that's on me. Also, without wishing to turn into this AITA post, part of me wonders if I might have crushed his guy's desire to play. I just didn't want to set him up for failure by making him think that D&D was going to be a solo game where the plot would revolve around his character, even if that was what he wanted. If the guy wants to make stories for Damien, that's fine, he can make stories on his own, but like not at the TTRPG table. If he wants to play TTRPGs, he should definitely try it, but he should also consider not making a character that's going to be a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu. Make a character that is willing to have flaws, that are willing to take faults, that are willing to have different things happen to them, because that's the fun of it. The randomness and the events is what's fun about D&D. The thing what frustrated me the most about Damien's player was that, outside all the obvious edge and wannabe badass energy he was attempting to pull out, I could see a faint glimmer of potential. A character being manipulated by a bell to seek greater power so he could claim revenge and eventually pave the Archdevil's way of reclaiming Avernus could be a really cool personal storyline, provided it fit the campaign. But that was the problem, if it fit the campaign. Whether this guy had done lore research on D&D and that's what got him into it without realizing how the game itself works, or he did know and was just willfully ignorant on the matter, I don't know. But he clearly expected to only be part of a story, tailored to his character and nobody else. And I know at this point we're gonna say, mate, why are you even playing D&D? Just write a book. But the scary thing is, reader, he'd probably try. That's fine, let him write a book, better than having to be at some table just making disaster and making everybody disappointed in having him. He sounds like the kind of guy that wants to be the main character, the main protagonist, the bestest ever. That's some problem player behavior. Another thing that makes him a problem player is the fact that he can't take constructive criticism or can't listen. He has to be the best ever. He has to be the bestest ever all the time. There's no other way option. There's no option around it. He has to be the best. If he's not the best, he's gonna just, I don't know, complain. Either way, I don't think you're the a-hole. You gave the guy the honest opinion on what you thought about the character, and we got to read some pretty interesting lore about a really big edgelord character, which is always entertaining. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.